Welcome, and thanks for joining us. Into everyday life inside a medieval tavern, this video provides a quiet examination from the viewpoint of the keeper responsible for its operation, on steady routines, practical responsibilities, and the social patterns shaping each day. The focus maintains its position within this busy yet familiar environment. Through repeated tasks, shared interactions, and the gradual rhythm carrying activity, from morning preparation through to the quiet close of night, work found its forward movement in this space. Built with timber framing, the tavern sits near the road on a foundation of irregular stonework that rises only slightly from the ground. Age and exposure to smoke and moisture have darkened the wooden beams over time. Wattle and daub fill the spaces between these timbers, showing evidence of multiple repairs throughout the years. Where the ground beneath has settled, the outer walls reveal slight irregularities, their lines no longer perfectly straight. Thick layers of thatch cover the roof at a gentle slope, with newer straw visibly tied over sections that have aged. During periods of rain, moisture accumulates in the thatch and releases a lingering smell of damp plant material near the overhanging eaves. Years of contact from hands, shoulders, and the edges of loads carried through have worn the heavy wooden lintel smooth above the narrow entrance. Crossbeams running wall to wall support the low ceiling inside. Smoke from the hearth collects against these beams, leaving their surfaces coated in blackened soot that feels slightly tacky to the touch. A persistent blend of odors fills the air and refuses to dissipate completely, even with the door left open. Wood smoke provides the foundation of this smell, over which layers of ale, stale beer absorbed into wooden surfaces, old straw, damp wool, and the mild sourness from unwashed travellers. The scent of cooked grains and boiled vegetables has seeped into the walls and the floor covering of rushes, becoming part of the space itself. Only limited amounts of light find their way inside. High up in the walls, small window openings allow illumination to enter, though not through clear glass. Instead, these openings are covered with oiled cloth or thin panels made from horn that permit only a subdued glow to pass through. Without sharp definition, the light spreading from these windows leaves the room's corners in shadow, even when the sun reaches its midday height. Early in the morning, a grey tone pervades the interior, creating an environment neither fully dark nor clearly bright, as shapes gradually become visible with the lightening sky outside. When the hearth fire burns actively, it provides the only source of strong illumination. During quieter periods, only a red glow emanates from it, touching nearby surfaces while leaving more distant areas in a subdued state. Positioned slightly away from the room's exact center, the hearth allows smoke to rise toward a vent in the roof overhead. Smooth stones, worn by countless footsteps and the movement of iron cookware, form a circle around its base. Fine ash dust extends beyond this ring despite being swept regularly, working its way into cracks in the nearby floorboards. From a crossbar above the fire, an iron hook suspends kettles over the flames. Long after the fire burns low, the stones continue to radiate stored warmth that influences the temperature of the entire space, particularly during cold months when the walls themselves become damp and cold to any touch. Thick wooden planks resting on trestles form the tables that occupy the main floor area. Uneven surfaces marked by knife cuts and dark circular stains from cups characterize these tabletops. Over many years, grease has penetrated deep into the wood grain, creating a dull sheen that persists despite cleaning. Long benches extend along each side of the tables, providing seating for multiple people positioned close to one another. Though these benches can be moved to create additional space, their considerable weight makes frequent repositioning impractical. Smaller stools positioned near the walls wait for those who choose to sit separately or for late arrivals who find the benches already crowded. In certain sections, the floor consists of packed earth, while other areas have rough wooden boards. Layers of rushes cover both types of flooring, serving to soak up spills and provide some cushioning underfoot. When these rushes become excessively damp or begin to smell foul, they get replaced. But during the intervals between changes, they accumulate food scraps, spilled ale, and dust tracked in from outside. A persistent plant-like odor rises from them, mingling with all the other smells that settle toward the floor. Each footstep across the rushes produces a soft rustling sound as small pieces shift and expose the darker, compressed layers underneath. Wooden cradles positioned to tilt the barrels forward hold the ale containers that line one wall. Cloth wrapping protects the protruding spigots from insects when they're not actively dispensing. The barrel wood responds to atmospheric conditions, swelling when the air is damp and contracting slightly during dry weather, which requires the tavern keeper to watch carefully for any signs of leakage. Over time, repeated dripping has left darker staining on the floor beneath these barrels. Clay cups, wooden trenchers, and several metal vessels, kept for special occasions, rest on nearby shelves. The weight of these items has caused the shelving to bow somewhat, and repeated handling has smoothed the shelf edges where hands reach most frequently. A long board laid across supporting structures creates the serving counter on the wall opposite the barrels. Standing behind this counter gives the keeper easy access to drinks, cups, and a small chest where coins are stored. Because the room sees many strangers passing through, this chest stays within close reach, often positioned beneath the counter or secured with cord to something fixed in place. Ladles, knives and cloths hang from hooks that have been driven into the posts. Each implement occupies a customary position, arranged through long established habit, rather than any formal plan. A narrow passage extending toward the rear of the building provides access to storage areas and a ladder ascending to the loft above. Shielded from the warmth of the hearth, the storage space maintains cooler temperatures than the main room. Raised boards keep sacks of grain elevated above the potentially damp ground. Cheese wheels wrapped in cloth hang suspended, while bundles of dried herbs and onions dangle from the rafters overhead. When available, salted meat also hangs from hooks here, adding its distinctive sharp aroma to the air. Small quantities of beans or peas fill clay jars that are sealed with cloth and wax whenever possible. Sleeping quarters for the keeper, any assistants, and occasionally for guests when the lower floor becomes full, occupy the loft space above. Following the angle of the roof, the ceiling slopes in this upper area, where warmth and thickness increase in the air from smoke rising below. Rough blankets cover straw-filled pallets arranged in rows. Through openings in the thatch and gaps between boards, faint drafts bring in the coolness of night air or the chill of early morning. Sounds from below travel upward freely, the boards providing almost no barrier to voices, the scraping of benches or the sharp crack of burning wood. Pegs set into the wall near the entrance hold cloaks, hats, and bags left by arriving guests. Stains from damp cloth and mud mark the wall beneath these pegs. Heavy planks, bound together with iron straps, form the door itself. The door doesn't seat tightly within its frame, allowing thin streams of light and air to pass through the gaps. Outside, wind causes the door to shift in its mounting, producing dull sounds from the iron fittings. A wooden bar positioned nearby provides the means to secure the entrance during nighttime hours. While the room's atmosphere shifts with the passing hours, its fundamental character stays constant. Traces of previous occupants remain present even when the space stands empty. Rather than staying motionless, the air moves in gradual currents created by heat rising from the hearth and drafts entering through the door and windows. Rising smoke spreads and gradually thins, creating a haze that blurs edges and reduces the clarity of distant surfaces. When many people gather, moisture from cooking and breathing increases the heaviness of the air. Within this low-ceilinged space, sound takes on particular qualities. When people occupy the room, their voices bounce off beams and walls to create a steady background murmur. During quiet periods, smaller sounds become noticeable. Wood settling in place, water dripping from a damp cloak, or the faint scratching of a mouse moving behind stored sacks, all become audible. Through these sounds, the building reveals its age, as joints shift, position and thatch rustles when wind passes over it. Rather than decoration, every surface displays evidence of practical use. Natural wood tones, clay coloring, and cloth darkened by smoke provide the only colors present. Changes appear only when guests bring in objects from outside. A strip of dyed fabric, a polished buckle, or the gleam of a metal cup briefly stands out against the muted surroundings, before disappearing again among the familiar textures. Both as living quarters and as a place of business, the tavern functions in ways that reflect this dual nature. The hearth simultaneously warms food being prepared and the room where people gather. Tables accommodate eating and drinking, but also serve for conducting business and occasionally for sleeping. Food stored for guests mixes with provisions meant for the household itself. Separation between private and public areas remains minimal and temporary. A hanging curtain or a repositioned bench might suggest some division, but smells and sounds move freely throughout. Before the arrival of many visitors, the early morning space feels weighted down by remnants from the day before. Stale notes from spilled drinks and extinguished fires permeate the air. A grey coating of ash lies settled, and the rushes show flattening where feet compress them. Through narrow beams of light from the windows, dust particles become visible as they turn slowly in the air. During this hour, the tavern's underlying structure reveals itself most clearly, unobscured by the activity and noise that will come later. In subtle ways that affect the interior, the building's materials respond to changing weather conditions. When dampness prevails, touching the walls produces a sensation of coolness and slight wetness, while the smell of earth rises more strongly from the floor. During dry spells, the wood contracts and fine cracks appear as dust accumulates more readily. Cold air from outside descends to settle near floor level, while warmth remains trapped higher up, creating a noticeable temperature difference between sitting and standing height. These various elements combine to create the consistent environment where the tavern keeper carries out daily work. Rather than undergoing rapid changes, the building displays worn surfaces that speak to extended use over time. Dimness, mingled odors, irregular textures, and the constant presence of smoke residue characterize the setting that greets each new day. How the physical space is arranged influences patterns of movement, restricts the entry of light, contains heat, and collects sounds, forming an enclosed world that centers around the hearth and the rough-hewn tables surrounding it. As early morning grey gradually intensifies, the arrangement of objects inside becomes easier to discern. Dark masses that fill the space begin resolving into recognizable shapes. Thick boards laid across two solid supports form the serving counter positioned along the side wall closest to the barrels. Long exposure to cups, knives, and damp cloths has left its mark on the counter surface. The narrow working area behind it permits only single file passage, requiring careful coordination when multiple people need to work in that space. Countless hands resting on it, fingers tapping against it, coins sliding across it, and cups being pushed over it, have gradually rounded the counter's front edge over the years. A curved arrangement of ale barrels lines the wall immediately behind the counter. Each barrel sits in a wooden frame designed to angle its opening downward for easier dispensing. Where liquid has seeped out and then dried, darker bands mark the wood of the barrel staves. Small wedges kept within easy reach allow for tilt adjustments, while folded cloths hang from pegs ready for wiping up spills. Repeated dripping has created shallow worn spots in the floorboards directly beneath the barrels. The keeper's attention returns frequently to these areas, knowing that moisture allowed to linger too long will encourage wood rot and draw insects. Every bit of wall space above the barrels serves a purpose. Coils of rope, spare leather straps, and small sacks holding dried herbs or salt hang from wooden pegs. Clay jugs sealed with wax rest on a narrow shelf running the length of this wall, each containing something that must be protected from exposure to air. At its midpoint, the shelf shows a slight downward bow, corrected by a small stone wedged underneath one end for stability. Positioning everything on this shelf within arm's reach from behind the counter eliminates unnecessary steps during busy periods. Most of the open floor on the opposite side fills with benches and tables. Rather than forming straight rows, the tables follow the room's irregular shape, creating narrow walking paths between them. These paths channel movement toward the counter, the hearth, and the storage area at the back. As light levels increase, the worn tabletops display their unevenness more clearly, showing shallow depressions where bowls and elbows have rested repeatedly over time. Along the edges, repeated contact with sleeves has smoothed away splinters that once protruded from the wood. Functioning as a focal point for the room's organization, the hearth sits positioned slightly away from the center. Additional open space surrounds it to allow pots to be safely carried back and forth. Against the encircling stones lean several iron implements, including a poker, a pair of tongs, and a flat shovel meant for ash removal. A small supply of split wood rests nearby in careful arrangement to keep it dry. When morning air seeps in through cracks around the door, it encounters warmth still radiating from the stones and creates slow-moving currents that rise and then spread across the ceiling beams. Set high in the walls, the small windows undergo changes in character as the sky continues brightening. Initially appearing as pale shapes against dark walls, the horn or oiled cloth coverings begin emitting a faint glow as more light reaches them. Downward in soft and irregular patterns, this light spreads to reveal dust particles suspended in motion. The illumination reaches the floor unevenly rather than uniformly. Certain areas receive focus, such as portions of a tabletop, the edge of a bench, or the curved side of a barrel, while surrounding areas remain more subdued. This uneven distribution of light guides the keeper's early morning activities, with tasks requiring good visibility being performed first in the better lit areas. Where the entrance meets the floor, heavier wear becomes apparent. Dried mud brought in on boots has formed thin, crusty layers that fracture under weight. Though these rushes near the doorway receive more frequent replacement, the earth underneath retains a darker color. Items left behind overnight hang from pegs along the entry wall, including a worn cloak, a leather pouch, and a walking stick. Motionless in the quiet, these objects serve as familiar reminders of guests who might return or who have departed without reclaiming their possessions. A hanging cloth partially conceals the entrance to the storage passage along the back wall. This cloth barrier helps minimize drafts and slows the escape of the hearth's warmth into the cooler space beyond. Lifting this cloth reveals air that feels both heavier and cooler, carrying the distinctive smell of stored grain and root vegetables. The passage itself offers so little width that anyone carrying a sack or jug must angle their body sideways to pass through. At a shallow angle, the ladder providing access to the loft rises with rungs that many feet have polished smooth over time. In the limited early light, the upper space remains quite dim, since almost no direct illumination reaches that far. Outlines of straw bedding become barely visible, along with low beams that follow the downward slope of the roof. Viewed from below, the loft appears as a dark horizontal band beneath the thatch, though if someone moves up there, faint motion might be detected, with the boards offering minimal sound barrier. Voices and other noises from that space travel downward easily. Nearly every vertical surface not required for passage supports hooks and pegs. Organized in groups, cooking implements hang in logical clusters with ladles positioned together, knives grouped together, and wooden spoons gathered in a small bundle. Maintaining these positions consistently allows hands to reach for needed items without visual searching. The cloth designated for wiping surfaces hangs in the spot closest to the counter, while a different cloth used for handling hot pots occupies a position nearer to the hearth. These deliberate placements minimize crossing paths and support efficient workflow when the room becomes crowded. Though not housed within the main room, animals kept in nearby areas exert influence on the interior environment. Through cracks and gaps, their presence outside the walls makes itself known inside. Hay and manure produce a faint scent that drifts inward, particularly when the wind direction shifts. Occasional soft sounds filter through, such as a hoof being repositioned, a snort, or straw being disturbed. Blending with the room's own quiet morning sounds, these animal noises form a low-level background that persists throughout the day. With strengthening light, the colors of various surfaces gain visibility, though they remain muted overall. Variations in the wood become apparent, ranging from pale, worn sections to areas darkly stained by smoke. Differences in the glazing of clay cups reveal themselves, some surfaces appearing more matte, while others show faint reflectivity. A mixture of faded green and straw-colored tones characterizes the rushes covering the floor. Nothing achieves brightness, and the general effect stays subdued, with texture creating more impact than color. During this transitional period, temperature undergoes subtle shifts. Cold air that accumulated overnight near the floor begins lifting as the hearth receives fresh attention. The temperature difference between ankle level and chest level decreases, though the stone walls continue holding onto nighttime chill. Rather than experiencing sudden warmth, the keeper notices these changes through the gradual loosening of stiffness in the fingers and the disappearance of breath made visible by cold air. The building itself produces sounds in response to these temperature changes. Slight warming causes the beams to expand and release faint creaking noises. Overhead, the thatch may release a few droplets of moisture that had condensed during the night, falling with soft tapping sounds onto the floor or the hearthstones below. Small creatures that were active during darkness hours retreat into hidden spaces, their brief scurrying movements giving way to returning stillness. From the doorway's vantage point, the world outside gains definition. The grey tones beyond begin shifting toward pale colors as the road's outline emerges from the dimness. Despite this external brightening, the interior maintains its enclosed quality, shaped by the low ceiling and limited openings. Rather than arriving suddenly with a flood of brightness, the transition from night to day unfolds gradually as the tavern progresses from shadowed quietness toward dim readiness. Positioned for function rather than appearance, all objects within the space maintain their practical arrangement. No surfaces are kept deliberately clear for visual effect. Whether holding tools, supporting vessels, or directing movement, every board, peg, and corner serves an intended purpose. This density of practical function defines the space as one of continuous labor. Even in moments of stillness, the arrangement suggests tasks awaiting attention. Following predictable routes determined by the building's structure, airflow moves through the interior. Near the door and lower wall gaps, drafts make their entrance before crossing the floor, rising when they encounter the hearth, and finally exiting through vents in the roof. While this circulation carries smoke in an upward direction, it never succeeds in clearing it completely. A persistent haze results, softening outlines and reducing contrast, especially in the upper regions near the beams and loft. Within this layout, the keeper's position takes on central importance. Standing behind the counter provides a view encompassing most of the room, including the tables, the hearth, and the doorway. Only the storage passage and the loft above remain partially obscured from this vantage point. This positioning enables observation of both movement and the condition of objects without requiring constant walking around. Though not the result of formal planning, the design naturally supports this need for comprehensive oversight. Advancing through the morning hours, the room transitions from a space of rest into one of preparation. More surfaces receive the touch of increasing light, revealing what requires attention before guests begin arriving. Despite these preparations, the interior's essential character undergoes no fundamental change. Enclosed, marked by smoke, and shaped by prolonged use, it remains constant. How everything is arranged continues to direct patterns of motion, restrict lines of sight, and gather both smells and sounds into a single contained environment where the day's work will soon unfold. Movement stirs inside the tavern, while full daylight has yet to touch the road beyond. Rising from the loft where stale air has accumulated through the hours of darkness, the keeper begins the day. Practiced and unhurried, the descent down the ladder proceeds with feet locating worn rungs by memory alone. Grey dimness of early morning still pervades the room waiting below. Beneath a coating of ash, the hearth embers display only a weak reddish glow. Attention must turn first to the fire, as both warmth and illumination rely entirely upon it. Using the iron shovel, ash gets pulled backward to reveal the deeper coals that retained modest heat overnight. Thin sticks receive careful placement across these coals before thicker pieces follow, positioned to allow air circulation between them. Directed low over the embers, steady breath coaxes forth a glow that after some moments produces a small flame catching along the dry wood's surface. Modest in its initial state, the flame requires gradual fuel additions to prevent smothering. Low crackling sounds begin spreading as the fire strengthens, while warmer light starts extending its reach to the surrounding stones and implements. Once the fire achieves stability, focus shifts toward water management. A wooden bucket that remained near the back passage overnight receives lifting and carrying outside to wherever the well or previous day's supply barrel stands. Heavy in the cool morning air, the drawn water demands careful handling to avoid spillage, given that every trip represents invested time and effort. Returning to the area near the hearth, the bucket yields some of its contents to a warming pot, while the remainder stays reserved for washing surfaces, cups and hands. Sweeping work follows next, beginning in the hearth area where ash has drifted outward. Bound twigs forming a broom push fine grey dust toward the room's edges, where it mingles with accumulated dirt and debris caught among the rushes. Guided by remembered knowledge of the floor's irregular sections, the sweeping motion maintains steadiness. Rushes showing excessive dampness or foulness get lifted away and replaced by drier bundles retrieved from storage. This substitution diminishes odor and provides a fresher underfoot surface for the coming day, though deeper set smells persist regardless. A damp cloth drawn from the bucket serves for wiping tables and benches. Grease and dust cause the cloth to darken rapidly during collection. Clearing each tabletop of crumbs remaining from the previous night proceeds methodically, while any forgotten cups or trenchers undergo gathering and stacking. Because wooden surfaces readily absorb moisture, wiping remains light to prevent grain swelling. Similar attention goes to the serving counter, particularly the section where coins and cups typically rest, since sticky build-up in that location impedes later work. Checking the ale barrels comes next in the sequence. Pressing a hand against each barrel stave, the keeper feels for moisture that might indicate developing leaks. Testing follows to confirm spigots turn with proper freedom. Into a cup, a small measure of ale may be drawn for examination through smell and taste, verifying it hasn't soured past the point of usability. Any cloths wrapping the spigots that show dampness or soiling receive replacement. Morning after morning before guest arrivals, these checks follow their routine pattern. From the cooler storage space at the back, bread wrapped in cloth gets brought forward into the main area. Counter placement precedes cutting the loaves into portions using a knife maintained sharp specifically for this work. Following identical lines day after day, the knife's path produces slices of comparable thickness to maintain fairness during serving. Harder crusts get set aside for later soaking in broth. When available, cheese or dried meat also moves forward to positions allowing quick access. Counting and arranging cups proceeds as another preparatory step. Along the shelf behind the counter, clay cups, including some bearing chips, form a line. Wooden cups undergo inspection for cracks that could permit leaking. Rarely used metal vessels receive wiping before returning to their designated spots. Stacking trenchers near the hearth eliminates the need for extended carrying when hot food requires serving. During busier periods, this arrangement minimizes cross-room movement. When helpers participate in the work, task division occurs without verbal coordination, relying instead on established habit. While one person continues cleaning activities, another might attend to the pot positioned over the fire, stirring grains or vegetables that soaked overnight. Movements stay quiet as a way of conserving energy during this cool hour preceding the day's noisier phases. Any words spoken remain brief and practical, addressing only immediate requirements. Warming proceeds for the pot positioned over the hearth, releasing a mild scent of grain and water from its contents. Preventing bottom sticking requires stirring at regular intervals. From a pouch kept elevated and dry, a small quantity of salt might receive addition. Serving as a foundational meal for early arrivals or for those lacking means to afford more, this simple pottage will maintain its steady simmer as a background sound persisting through much of the day. The doorway receives unbarring and the door opens partially to permit fresh air entry. Morning light now enters with greater clarity, while smoke from the revived fire locates its upward path. Shifting air carries away portions of the night's accumulated staleness. From beyond the walls, early sounds reach inside, including a distant cartwheel, bird calls, and animal movements. These audible signals mark the beginning of activity in the world outside the tavern. Checking and securing the coins kept overnight follows as another task. Opening the small chest allows contents counting through both touch and sight. Different sizes and origins characterize the coins lying together, their edges and markings long familiar. Following the count, the chest receives closing and repositioning to remain easily reachable yet hidden from plain sight at the doorway. Cord or a simple lock might provide security, though continuous watchfulness remains the primary protection. The floor section near the entrance demands additional attention. Mud tracked inside the previous day may have dried into ridges capable of catching feet. Thicker deposits get removed using a scraper, while fresh rushes provide coverage for the area. This treatment reduces slipping hazards and maintains greater interior orderliness. Items left hanging from the pegs by the door undergo clearing and get placed aside in a known location should their owners come back to claim them. During these various tasks, adjustments to the keeper's own clothing take place. Over simple garments, a tied apron offers protection against spills. Sleeves might receive rolling to keep them away from water and ash contact. Before handling food, hands already showing works marks get rinsed in the bucket. These small preparatory actions ready the body for the hours stretching ahead. When light has filled a greater portion of the room, the tavern's state has transformed from nighttime stillness into operational readiness. Steady burning characterizes the fire, water reaches warming temperatures, surfaces show clearing, and supplies rest within convenient reach. Slight changes affect the room's smell profile as fresh smoke layers over older scents, while steam from cooking grain rises into the surrounding air. Through this space, the keeper travels along practiced routes, rarely pausing, with each action connecting to the next in a daily repeated sequence. For everything following, this beginning establishes the rhythm. Neither rushed nor sluggish, the work proceeds at a measured pace, driven by the necessity of completing essential tasks ahead of the first guest's entrance. Still dim and enclosed, the environment now sustains activity instead of rest, leaving the tavern prepared to accommodate the movement and voices that will shortly arrive to fill it. Beyond the doorway, strengthening first light marks the morning's advancement, while work focus settles into the reliable processes governing food preparation and supply management. Holding a consistent bed of coals, the hearth becomes the central point for these activities. Without wasteful excess, heat requires maintenance, since fuel comes in limited quantities gathered through effort. Only when necessary do thicker logs receive addition, while smaller pieces fill spaces between and maintain flame evenness. The keeper monitors both the fire's color and its sound, making wood placement adjustments to prevent sudden flaring or smoke that would overly thicken the air. A simple pottage fills the main pot suspended above the hearth. When overnight soaking proves possible, grains like barley or oats soften during their simmering. Root vegetables from previous days' storage undergo cutting into small pieces before measured addition. Against remaining stores hers, each addition faces judgment, since supplies must extend across days of uncertain duration. At regular intervals, a long-handled wooden spoon stirs the pot to prevent bottom sticking. Following the vessel's curve, the motion proceeds slowly and circularly. In steady flow, steam rises while carrying the mild scent of cooked grain throughout the surrounding space. Among the coals or hanging from lower hooks, smaller vessels may receive positioning beside the main pot. For washing cups, thinning broth, or preparing drink mixtures, these containers hold water to conserve fuel. Their contents stay maintained below full boiling point. Soot darkening occurs on the pot surfaces, while handles retain warmth that necessitates cloth use during movement. Around the hearth, each pot occupies a customary position remembered through habit, allowing hands to reach without requiring visual search. Where quick serving becomes possible, the bread cut earlier receives arrangement. Since little faces discard, hard crusts resisting slicing get set aside for later soaking. After each use, available cheese undergoes re-wrapping to slow its drying process. Measured in small handfuls, dried peas or beans from storage sacks receive soaking in separate containers when plans call for a thicker dish later. Not only the present hour, but also the anticipated guest flow receives consideration in these preparations, with variations depending on market days, weather patterns, and road traffic levels. Constant attention becomes necessary for storage management. In the rear space, where cooler temperatures prevail, grain sacks face checking for dampness or pest evidence. Through the top layer, a hand runs to feel for warmth or clumping that would signal spoilage development. When grain displays turning signs, it receives earlier use despite potentially poorer taste. Hanging from hooks, salted meat undergoes inspection for mold, with outer layers facing trimming when they show deterioration. As part of maintaining food usability, such losses receive acceptance. Equal care becomes demanded by ale storage. Once opened, barrels begin changing as air gains entry. How long each has remained in use gets noted by the keeper, who plans serving order accordingly. First drawing comes from older barrels. When flavor shifts in a sour direction, the ale might still find use in cooking, rather than as offered drink. Waste prevention and value extension result from this practice. Until needed, newly delivered barrels receive placement slightly apart with their bungs tightly sealed. Though drawn daily, water also requires guarding. To keep ash and insects excluded, containers receive covering. When water stands for excessive duration, its taste undergoes dulling, prompting fresh heating of smaller amounts as needs arise. How much stays kept near the hearth at any given time follows from balancing carrying effort against freshness maintenance. Through a continuous cycle, utensils move between use and cleaning. Returned by early guests, cups receive rinsing in warm water and cloth wiping before shelf repositioning. Often wooden, trenchers undergo scraping with a knife to remove stuck food ahead of wiping. The keeper avoids prolonged wood soaking since swelling promotes crack development. Used in cleaning, cloths receive rinsing and wringing before hanging near the hearth, where warmth assists their drying. To signs from outside, the preparation pace makes adjustments. Approaching customers receive suggestion from the sound of road wheels or passing voices. When such sounds increase, the keeper makes certain that cups form ready rows and that the pottage has achieved suitable serving thickness. Should supplies run low, additional water may receive addition, thinning the mixture while maintaining warmth and filling capacity. Alongside food work, fuel management continues. Periodically, ash building up around the fire receives backward drawing to maintain open air channels. Inward shifting affects larger embers to sustain even heat distribution. Because wood stored inside remains limited, especially during colder seasons, outside trips to gather more may face requirement. Where it can dry, each brought-in piece receives stacking. Positioned to avoid excessive hearth proximity that would create risk. As these tasks continue, subtle shifts affect the smells within the tavern. Over the older, settled odors, the scent of fresh smoke creates an overlay. From cooking grain, steam adds moisture to the air, softening ash's dryness. Should onions or herbs receive pot addition, their sharper notes briefly achieve prominence before background blending. Without altering the room's basic character, these changes signal service readiness. Constant awareness of supplies persists. In mind, the keeper holds the grain amount remaining, the loaf count, cheese condition, and each ale barrel's level. This knowledge provides guidance for portion sizing. Through repetition, ladles dipped into the pot deliver measures of similar size. Those paying more might receive larger portions, but to avoid early depletion, the general size maintains steadiness. Though interrupting this rhythm, deliveries form part of the routine when they occur. A grain sack from a nearby farm, an herb bundle, or a small cask might arrive. By hand and eye, these items receive weighing before storage according to need. Payment might proceed immediately or face noting for later settlement. Before full acceptance, the keeper checks new goods, looking for dampness, insects, or age indicators. To changing levels, storage arrangement makes adaptations. As emptying occurs, sacks receive folding and setting aside for reuse. Until new supply comes, hooks once holding meat might stand empty. Never left idle, space shifts according to goods flow. Thus, over days, the rear storage area changes slowly, reflecting the balance between incoming and outgoing provisions. Throughout these tasks, established paths guide movement, including hearth to counter, counter to storage, and storage back to hearth. To conserve energy, steps receive measuring. With bent knees and steady pace, heavy lifting proceeds to reduce strain. From repeated contact with rough surfaces, hands bear marks, while motions achieve economy through repetition. For the tavern's operation, these preparations form the foundation. Without them, once guests arrive in number, service would falter. When voices begin gathering near the doorway, the pot maintains steady simmering. Bread shows portioning. Ale stands ready for drawing, and tools rest in known positions. Already shaped by smoke and dim light, the tavern environment now carries the additional layer of active cooking and careful storage, providing sustenance for both keeper and those who enter. with the road outside showing greater activity as the day progresses. People entering the tavern begin establishing the rhythm that governs the interior. Framed by the doorway, left open for light and air admission, a continuous sequence of figures appears. Their clothing, posture, and possessions revealing distinct needs and habits. Space arrangement must undergo small changes with each arrival, since adjustments to seating, attention distribution, and provision allocation cannot afford delay. First arrivals typically include local villagers. Entering without hesitation, their familiar steps carry them toward customarily occupied benches. Marks from nearby fields or workshops characterize their clothing, while the scents they bring include earth, animals, or wood shavings. At first, these guests maintain low-toned speech, their voices still bearing the influence of early labor. Simple fare and measured portions align with their expectations, with payment arriving as small coins or goods promised for future delivery. Without maintaining written records, the keeper tracks such exchanges through memory of faces and observed return patterns. Less predictable in their numbers, travelers arrive afterward. Dust coats their cloaks and boots, and sometimes pack animals that stay outside accompany them. Upon entering, their movements initially proceed more slowly as vision adapts to the interior's dimness. Along walls or near the hearth, where warmth counteracts the chill carried from the road, they seek available space. Positioned near their feet or suspended from pegs, their belongings occupy room requiring careful navigation. Both food and drink receive requests from these guests, with some inquiring about sleeping accommodations for the approaching night. Another distinct category comes from merchants, identifiable by the bundles or chests receiving their close guard. Though dulled by travel, their clothing may display superior materials. Seating that permits simultaneous observation of both their goods and the surrounding room receives their preference. Counting, measuring, or discussing road and market conditions often characterizes their conversations, though such talk contributes to background sound rather than commanding focus. Larger coins may provide their payment, while accurate change becomes their expectation, requiring the keeper to handle transactions with careful attention. At certain hours, particularly when work breaks occur, laborers from nearby tasks arrive in grouped clusters. Less restrained movements and louder voices distinguish them. Without concern for personal comfort, they crowd onto benches in shared occupation. Quick ale drawing and filling food form the center of their demands. By maintaining ladles and cups in steady sequential motion, the keeper responds to reduce waiting periods that might generate impatience. During these intervals, spilled drink becomes more frequent, necessitating regular cloth use to prevent surface slickness. Armed men occasionally make their entrance, weapons lending presence even during rest periods. Their arrival produces slight alteration to the room's tone as surrounding space expands without verbal agreement. Positions offering clear doorway or wall views receive their selection. Though their needs mirror those of other travelers, their environmental awareness maintains greater constancy. The keeper provides service matching any guest, while preserving even manner and measured portion delivery. Continuous shifts affect seating arrangements. As the room reaches capacity, benches accommodating 2 people may expand to hold 4. From walls to table ends, stools undergo drawing and placement to permit passage for the keeper or helpers. Transporting pots and cups, guests make positional adjustments. Between tables, narrow paths demand careful stepping, with the keeper's body angling sideways at certain points to prevent contact. Shaped by awareness of each person's location, movement achieves a practiced, flowing quality. Without appearing divided, attention must undergo splitting. During ale drawing for one guest, the keeper maintains listening for another's call or observes a slightly raised empty cup. When individuals cannot receive direct access, bread passes along tables. As a brief pause point, the counter allows simultaneous viewing of multiple requests. Tracking who has received service and who remains waiting relies on memory, preventing order-related disputes. In layered patterns, voices undergo rising and falling. Road reports and bargaining speech mix with local discussion of fields and tools. Following short bursts, laughter appears before fading back into steady murmuring. Space or portion disagreements occur, but receive addressing through brief words or redirecting gestures rather than escalating responses. Often, tension reduction occurs without overt action when the keeper's presence approaches such moments. To this increase in bodies, the physical environment makes responses. Carrying stronger scents of wool, leather and breath, the air undergoes warming and thickening. These odors receive mingling from hearth smoke, while cooler wall surfaces accumulate moisture. From beams and low ceiling, sound reflects to blend individual voices into space-filling general hum. Continuous serving persists. In practiced motion, ale drawn from barrels flows into cups, with spigots turned precisely enough to achieve filling without foam spillage. Into the pottage, ladles dip to lift portions, receiving placement into trenchers before table passing. Against wood, coins produce clinking sounds, facing either immediate counting or later gathering upon group departure. Through all this activity, the keeper maintains steadiness rather than hurry in movement. Following familiar routes, Steps proceed while avoiding obstacles without pause. Between tasks, eyes scan the room while noting empty vessels, mood shifts, and hearth condition. Between servings, wood may receive fire addition to maintain heat consistency. Customer variety shapes not only spatial and noise conditions, but also the rate at which supplies depart from storage. Bread loaves undergo diminishment, barrel ale levels experience dropping, and the pot's contents steadily lower. These changes receive observation and adjustment responses, with pot water additions occurring when necessary or new loaves receiving forward movement from the back area. Despite present differences among occupants, the tavern's routine contains them within a single service and exchange pattern. Each person's presence produces slight room alteration, yet the keeper's repeated actions and the fixed arrangement of hearth, tables and counter continue guiding the underlying order. In this layered manner, the day's flow persists, shaped by arrivals and departures following the rhythm established by road activity and surrounding labour. Through cycles of filling and emptying, the tavern cultivates a steady social atmosphere residing beneath individual conversation surfaces. As the most constant element, sound maintains its presence. In continuous murmur, voices create overlap, rarely achieving full silence, except during brief pauses when multiple people engage in simultaneous listening. Holding these sounds in close proximity, the low ceiling and timber beams prevent their dispersal. Into tone, words undergo blurring, while meaning achieves travel only across short distances, though the overall speech presence maintains unbroken continuity. Not through deliberate choice, but through spatial necessity, most guests engage in table sharing. Shoulder to shoulder, benches provide seating for individuals whose elbows make contact during cup raising. Small postural adjustments result from this closeness as bodies angle slightly for room creation. Limited personal space receives acceptance as an environmental component. Near feet or on pegs, bags and tools remain positioned to reduce obstruction where possible. Along familiar lines, conversations take form about fields, animals, repairs, and weather. Locals engage in discussion. Regarding road conditions, distances, and lodging availability ahead, travelers exchange remarks. Weights, measures, and goods quality receive merchant discussion. Without requiring keeper attention, these topics circulate as the keeper listens only sufficiently to detect mood shifts or tension rising. At a level blending with the room's background sound, most speech remains positioned. In brief bursts, often following shared recollections or simple jokes, laughter makes its occurrence. Above the murmur, it rises momentarily before settling back into steady noise. At times, usually from one table end, singing may begin quietly, but long continuation seldom follows, unless larger drink quantities have received consumption. Even then, among many threads, it remains one, avoiding room domination. In small forms, disputes make their appearance. More space than another considers fair may receive one guest's claim, or in error a cup may face taking. Through direct exchange between involved parties, such matters typically receive addressing. From a short distance, the keeper maintains observation, stepping in only when voices rise beyond usual levels or gestures achieve sharpness. Brief intervention tends to result, consisting of a firm word, object repositioning, or fresh cup provision to redirect attention. The pace of interaction receives influence from drink presence. Measured speech and controlled movements characterize the early day. As hours proceed with more frequent ale drawing, gestures undergo widening while voices achieve greater volume. These changes receive keeper notation, potentially resulting in slightly slowed serving for individuals displaying excess signs, with refill spacing occurring without commentary. Without open refusal, this pacing assists balance maintenance. Shifting alliances and familiarity receive reflection in seating positions. Initially, sitting apart, often near walls or at table ends, strangers maintain separation. As time undergoes passage, shared talk may draw them in, resulting in bench sliding to achieve group joining. Gradually, this movement occurs through eye contact and small gesture guidance rather than words. Such mixing receives encouragement from the tavern's layout, since fixed partitions achieve no guest separation. Within this atmosphere, the keeper's role maintains constancy but avoids conversation centrality. Through the room, movement provides a quiet presence exerting behavioral influence. When passing closely, the keeper's awareness of posture, tone, and eye direction permits early strain recognition. To steady a cup, a hand placed on a table. To mark space, a cloth laid down. Or to ease moments before their growth, a brief word can function effectively. A steady undertone receives addition from hearth noise. Regardless of talk, wood crackling and pot bubbling continue softly. The room receives anchoring from these sounds, marking time without demanding attention. When logs undergo shifting to send a small spark shower upward, nearby guests execute slight backward leaning before position resumption. Predictability characterizes movement patterns. Rising to depart, guests make way for others, assuming their places with minimal delay. As benches undergo shifting, paths between tables experience opening and closing, with angled steps sometimes involving sideways turning for passage. The keeper navigates these paths. Into the social rhythm, this constant adjustment becomes integrated as bodies achieve mutual accommodation without spoken coordination. The communal aspect receives reinforcement from shared object use. Down a table, a bread loaf may pass while receiving portion breaking by multiple hands. From one person to another, a drink pitcher moves with refilling, occurring when emptiness arrives. The need for the keeper to serve each individual separately receives reduction from such exchanges, easing workload while strengthening the room's collective activity sense. Limited yet present, disorder maintains its existence. Across the floor, a cup may fall and roll, or when shifted, a bench leg may produce sharp scraping. Brief attention gets drawn by these small disruptions before fading as spill wiping occurs, and seating receives correction. Rare but possible, larger disturbances remain anticipated through the keeper's steady watchfulness. Warmed by numerous bodies, the air carries breath and scent, producing space-feel alteration. When possible, windows may receive wider opening, though size limitations restrict effect. Main exchange with outside air receives provision through the door undergoing opening and closing with arrivals and departures. A short draught accompanying each opening stirs smoke and produces smell balance shifting. Throughout these hours, as a shared shelter, the tavern operates where background differences achieve less significance than the common need for rest, food, and drink. Rather than formal, the developing social order maintains practical character, receiving shape from space, routine, and the keeper's consistent oversight. Without declaration, it persists, sustained by repeated behavioral patterns, guiding voices, movements, and small conflict handling. With the room maintaining steady use as the day progresses, exchange and accounting work proceeds beneath the surface of all observable activity, to the small yet constant flow of payment, credit, and obligation sustaining the tavern. Each drink or food serving creates a connection. In brief moments positioned between tasks, coins move across the counter while the keeper's attention executes quick shifts from one transaction to the next, maintaining unbroken service rhythm. Consistency characterizes portion measurement. Guided by submersion depth, a ladle entering the pot lifts a quantity already familiar through practice to a recognized line below the rim, allowing movement without spillage. Cups receive filling, not through tool markings, but through habit formed across long repetition. These measures take their shape. This steadiness prevents fairness disputes and protects limited supplies from excessive rapid use, even during busy intervals. In size, weight, and origin, received coins display variation. Clear markings characterize some, while others show edge smoothing from wear. Through touch, the keeper performs testing, sometimes executing light tapping of one against another to assess its sound. exchange provision in smaller pieces drawn from the counter-adjacent chest may become necessary for larger coins. Swift execution marks the counting act, often occurring while another hand extends toward a cup or loaf. Immediate coin involvement doesn't characterize all exchanges. Account settlement at a later time may receive requests from local guests, particularly those visiting regularly. Held in memory, their faces, voices, and visit patterns create a record. To note such credit, a mark might receive scratching on a small board or tally stick, though often memory alone provides balance guidance. On trust shaped through repeated contact, this system establishes its foundation, though risk accompanies it should someone fail to return. In the opposite direction, obligations result from supplies entering the tavern. Whether grain purchased from a nearby grower, ale from a brewer, or cheese from a household, payment must occur, sometimes through coin, sometimes through food or lodging exchange. Alongside those owed by guests, the keeper maintains tracking of these obligations. Through the week and across seasons, the balance undergoes shifting while rarely achieving full settlement. These pressures receive influence from seasonal change. When roads show busyness and travel maintains commonality, coin flows into the chest with greater steadiness. During quieter intervals, local custom receives increased reliance, while credit undergoes further extension. Slight portion size adjustments or pottage ingredient variations receive implementation by the keeper to match available stores, stretching remaining supplies without drawing attention to reduction. Part of this economic pattern gets formed by loss. What can be offered receives reduction from cups, broken accidentally, ale spilled beyond recovery possibility, or food undergoing storage spoilage. Rather than separate marking, daily calculation absorbs such losses. Through tightened measures elsewhere or delayed purchase of new goods until necessity arises, the keeper makes response. Many times through the day, the coin-holding chest undergoes opening and closing. Within sight or touch, whenever possible, it maintains its position. When counter-departure becomes necessary for the keeper, movement to a less visible location or cord tying provides security. Though trust in guests maintains existence, it achieves no caution replacement, since many unfamiliar faces occupy the room. Loud speaking doesn't characterize pricing. Through hand-shown coins or brief words, amounts receive quiet indication. Usual cost knowledge belongs to regulars, while newcomers engage in others' observation before payment offering. Rare occurrence marks price disputes, but calm addressing follows with portion or quality explanation when needed. Beyond single exchanges to the broader flow, the keeper's awareness achieves extension. Alongside coins received from its sale, the ale level in a barrel receives notation. Against money taken for it, the remaining bread faces judgment. About when to seek new supply or when to conserve, this ongoing comparison provides decision guidance. When present, helpers may perform payment collection for simple servings, but execute coin passing to the keeper for storage purposes. Accounting unification results from this central handling. To avoid confusion, credit or special arrangement instructions receive quiet delivery. Even during customer flow pauses, economic work maintains continuation. In such moments, chest contents recounting, coin separation by type, or small stack preparation for change may receive the keeper's attention. Tally mark review may occur while thoughts turn toward upcoming needs, including fuel gathering, grain purchasing, or repair execution. Through all these actions, tone maintains evenness. Speech doesn't face money domination, yet nearly every movement receives its shaping influence. On this steady balance between giving and receiving, the tavern's survival establishes its dependence, managed through memory, observation, and repeated small calculations, executed amid the larger daily workflow. Throughout the day, alongside the steady service and exchange flow, a range of risks maintains presence. Open appearance doesn't always characterize these, yet in subtle ways they exert influence on attention and movement. Where small disruptions can develop without warning, conditions result from the open hearth, constant goods handling, and many unfamiliar people's presence. Gradual behavior alteration follows from drink taken in quantity. Growing louder, voices undergo change while gestures achieve broadness and movements lose certainty. More force may characterize cup placement, or without care, benches face shifting. Without direct comment, the keeper maintains observation of these changes while adjusting service pace or offering food to slow developing effects. When rising intensity marks two individuals' speech, their posture and eye contact deliver early signs. Often, attention redirection before disagreement growth results from brief presence near them or a simple task directed their way. In the course of ordinary activity, minor injuries make their occurrence. Too close to the hearth, a hand may brush and redden from heat exposure or from a bench. A splinter may catch skin. With little pause, such incidents receive handling. For cooling, water receives offering, while for wrapping, a cloth serves. In a space filled with wood, metal, and flame, these small harms face expectation, and broader rhythm interruption seldom follows from them. As a quiet concern, theft maintains its presence. Into a pouch, if watchfulness lapses, Small items such as cups, knives or food bits may receive slipping. Through space arrangement and steady observation, the keeper achieves risk reduction. In known places, tools maintain hanging positions, and quick noticing follows their absence. Near at hand, the coin chest stays positioned, while from a position keeping them in view, unfamiliar guests receive service. Rare occurrence marks direct accusation as instead. Presence and attention achieve attempt discouragement. As the most constant physical danger, fire establishes its standing. When wood shifts, sparks may execute leaping from the hearth with landing on rushes or clothing. For this reason, partly clear remaining characterizes the area nearest the fire. While within reach, a water bucket maintains its position. To prevent build-up capable of carrying embers outward, ash receives regular clearing. When through the door wind makes entrance, flame stirring can result, so steady burning rather than flaring receives fuel arrangement priority. Another ongoing risk receives presentation from food spoilage. In warm weather, dampness development may affect stored grain, while meat can undergo quick turning. Early change catching forms the aim of the keeper's daily supply inspection. To immediate decision, sour smells, discoloration, or unusual softness lead, including at once cooking use or discarding. Among guests, illness can also produce room effects, as trouble signaling may come from coughing or weakness. Though distance possibility doesn't always exist, awareness provides guidance for shared vessel and surface handling. At irregular intervals, authority visits make their occurrence. To observe conditions or collect dues, a local official or representative may make entrance. Brief room tone alteration results from such visits as near the doorway. Space undergoes clearing while voices achieve lowering. As orderly with controlled fire and fair measures, the keeper executes tavern presentation. In these moments, coins may move across the counter, achieving future interference reduction. Further uncertainty receives addition from weather. More travelers receive indoor driving from heavy rain, crowding space and increasing supply demand. Back down through the roof vent, smoke can receive pushing from strong wind, thickening air and producing eye irritation. More fuel requirement results from cold periods, raising wood gathering effort. In small but noticeable ways, each condition produces shaping of the day's work. Risk introduction also comes from animals outside the walls. Against a post, a startled horse may execute kicking, causing noise and distraction. If the door stands open, dogs following travelers may achieve inside slipping, drawn by food scent. With firm gestures and outside guidance, such intrusions receive handling, preventing disorder among seated guests. Throughout these potential disruptions, the keeper's manner achieves evenness maintenance. Where needed, attention executes shifting, but voice and movement maintain measured quality. Before spreading occurs, cloths execute spill wiping. If tipped, benches receive righting, and if they roll too near the edge, coals undergo backward drawing. At a small scale, most risks face resolution, receiving absorption into the ongoing work pattern. Thus, within a field of low, constant uncertainty, the tavern executes its operation. Dramatic occurrence may achieve nothing, yet space management methods and room observation closeness receive shaping from trouble possibility. Service interruption doesn't result from this watchfulness, but instead receives its accompaniment, forming a quiet responsibility layer continuing from morning into the later hours. In the wider region beyond the tavern walls, events and movements maintain a steady yet indirect pressure that reaches into daily life within. Mostly through the words and presence of those travelling the road, these influences make their arrival. Rather than formal announcement, and news arrives as conversational fragments that shape expectation while lacking clear certainty about their full accuracy or meaning. Of armed groups observed at a distance, or of roads experiencing slowdown from checkpoints or patrol presence, travellers sometimes carry reports in their speech. How later arrivals receive treatment undergoes alteration from such accounts. When unfamiliar armed men make their entrance, against these earlier reports their presence faces weighing, while the keeper executes closer observation of their manner and bearing. To allow easier movement should conditions undergo shifting, space near the doorway may receive maintaining in a clearer state, with fewer obstacles blocking potential exit or entrance. Supply conditions can face affecting from rumours concerning dispute between nearby authorities or fresh levies imposed on goods moving through the region. A merchant passing through might make mention of increased tolls demanded at a bridge crossing, or stricter inspection procedures enforced at a town gate. That grain or ale deliveries may experience delay or arrive at greater cost receives suggestion from these details. While measuring portions or making decisions about when to seek new stock, the keeper takes such information into consideration. Though within the room no immediate visible change results from this awareness. Another form of uncertainty results from high-status individuals traveling with attendants in their company. Often, sound from outside precedes their arrival, including multiple hoofbeats striking the road, or voices issuing directions to companions or servants. When entrance occurs, clothing constructed from finer material and the particular manner characterizing their movement establishes their distinction from common travelers. space clearing and quicker service may form their expectations. With the same measured actions applied to others, the keeper provides response but executes position adjustment to maintain attentiveness to their needs. Without open instruction being given, other guests execute slight shifting that leaves more room available for these higher status arrivals. Rather than orders, pressure from powerful figures may also assume the form of requests that carry implications. A servant delivering a message might make inquiry about certain goods receiving setting aside, or about lodging availability on some future date. Beyond their explicit words, these requests carry weight, since refusal could generate difficulty in times to come. The keeper provides listening and acknowledges what has been asked, executing balance between such obligations and the requirements of ordinary guests, who also deserve fair treatment and attention. Its own distinct effect results from soldier movement along the road. Even when entrance doesn't occur, their passing produces changes in traveller flow patterns. The area may face avoidance from some, reducing custom for a period of time. In their wake, others follow, pursuing news or finding safety in gathered numbers. Through the pattern of arrivals, the keeper achieves noticing of these shifts, while making corresponding adjustments to food preparation quantities and firewood use to match the changed circumstances. Careful attention becomes necessary for unfamiliar guests whose background carries uncertainty. A traveller offering little speech while maintaining room observation may be experiencing tiredness or practicing caution, or may be carrying some other intent not immediately apparent. Steady observation continues from the keeper, with notation of where such a person chooses to sit and how they conduct handling of their belongings. Service provision maintains the same quality and manner, but awareness of their movements achieves continuation in the background of the keeper's attention throughout their stay. Direct events within the tavern rarely result from these external uncertainties, yet mood and readiness face shaping from their presence in awareness. When the door executes opening to reveal a new figure, conversations may undergo pausing. Between guests, glances may achieve passing if mention of trouble elsewhere makes reaching of their ears. A calm presence receives maintaining from the keeper, keeping tasks in forward motion, while preventing voices from achieving rising volume or agitated tone. Another layer to these influences receives addition from weather and season patterns. From nearby fields, a late frost or heavy rain receives reporting that provides hints at poor harvest outcomes, which may produce affecting of grain supply in later periods. Mentioned quietly, early signs of illness in a neighboring village cause the keeper to execute closer watching for coughing or weakness. among guests in the present gathering. Though such information maintains uncertain character, it provides informing of small choices in food handling and shared vessel management. Despite these various pressures arriving from outside, the tavern interior maintains continuation of its steady routine. Simmering continues for pots, filling proceeds for cups, and those seeking rest find holding on benches. As a contained space where outside change achieves arrival, only in fragments filtered through speech and presence, the building provides its function. For distant events, the keeper's work executes no pause, but of them the awareness persists, providing shaping to watchfulness and small decisions throughout the day's progression. With light outside undergoing fading and the road achieving quieter character, the arrival flow experiences slowing. In a more subdued manner, those remaining inside bring their food and drink to finishing. Voices that earlier achieved rising above the general murmur now execute settling into lower tones that blend more fully with the background sounds. In sequential fashion, one by one, guests execute rising from benches while gathering cloaks, bags, and tools they brought with them. In final exchanges, coins achieve passing across the counter while brief nods provide departure marking. Less often, the doorway undergoes opening and closing, and with each occurrence, cooler air makes entrance and achieves lingering for longer duration before the room's warmth can affect it. From serving toward closing tasks, the keeper's movements execute their shifting. Still active though it remains, the fire receives allowing to lessen in its intensity. Addition no longer occurs for larger wood pieces. Instead, with the iron tool, embers receive, drawing together to form a compact bed capable of holding heat without high flame production. Over parts of the coals, ash receives spreading in light application to achieve slowing of their burn rate. Through the night, this fire banking prepares it to maintain lasting while executing reduction of spark risk that could threaten safety. In stages, tables undergo clearing. Left behind, cups receive gathering and carrying to the hearth side, where warm water maintains its standing position. Rinsing and wiping occurs for each cup before upside-down placement for drying purposes. Free of food remnants through scraping, trenchers face stacking in organized arrangement. From surfaces onto the floor where morning sweeping will address them, breadcrumbs and rush bits receive brushing. Into their usual positions, benches receive pushing that leaves paths in more open configuration for easier passage. For stray embers, the floor near the hearth undergoes checking. Any small coal having rolled outward faces returning to the center or receives extinguishing through water touch application. Disturbed by many feet throughout the day, rushes receive spreading in more even distribution. The heaviest dirt receives scraping aside near the doorway, and the door itself faces examination. For looseness, hinges receive feeling assessment, and close to its eventual use position, the wooden bar receives bringing into ready state. Securing occurs for remaining food supplies. Not yet hardened, bread receives wrapping again in cloth before transportation to the cooler storage space. Covering and hanging where air can achieve movement around it occurs for cheese. If still holding pottage, the pot receives slight shifting from direct heat positioning, so its contents can execute slow cooling. Over it, a lid or cloth may receive placement to achieve prevention of ash settling inside its contents. Once more, ale barrels undergo checking. Firmly, spigots receive turning to closed position, and around them cloths receive wrapping. To remove drips that accumulated, the area beneath receives wiping. Used for the last servings, cups face rinsing before shelf returning. For a final count, the coin chest receives opening. Gathered through the day, coins undergo brief sorting by size before inside placement. Then closing, tying or locking occurs for the chest before movement from the counter to a less visible location that offers greater security during the night hours. As task proceeding continues, the room achieves growing quietness. The constant voice murmur undergoes fading, receiving replacement by the softer sounds of cloth on wood contact, water pouring and tools receiving setting down. A low, steady glow receives giving from the fire that touches the nearest stones while leaving the room's remainder in deepening shadow. In a thin line toward the roof vent, smoke executes rising. Once no more guests face expectation, the doorway receives full closing. Into place across it, the wooden bar receives setting. With the door achieving sealed state, drafts undergo lessening while the air inside achieves growing stillness. From the hearth and, if present, a small candle set briefly to finish tasks, the remaining light makes its coming. When its work achieves completion, the candle receives extinguishing, leaving only the red of embers to provide illumination. In this stillness, to its other role as dwelling, the tavern executes returning. Through the room one last time, the keeper makes movement with eyes achieving passing over counter, tables, hearth, and storage entrance. In their places, tools maintain hanging. Of immediate clutter, surfaces show clearing. The layered smells of smoke, grain, wood, and damp cloth receive holding by the air, now achieving undisturbed state from fresh movement. Again, the ladder to the loft receives climbing, with steps maintaining slowness after the long day's exertions. Below, their low glow continues from the embers, casting faint, shifting light that achieves reaching not far into the surrounding darkness. Distant and infrequent character marks sounds from outside. Within the walls, only the soft settling of wood and the quiet breath of banked coals achieve remaining presence. In near silence, the space that held many voices now executes its resting. Empty standing characterizes benches. In the dim light, tables achieve reflecting of a dull sheen. Reduced to a contained core of warmth, the hearth provides marking for the darkened room's center. Little air movement occurs, and no more than faint traces in the settled rushes receive leaving from the day's motion. Gradually, even the small sounds achieve lessening. Enclosed, the tavern maintains standing, its work receiving pause but not ending, holding within its walls the stored heat of embers and the familiar arrangement of tools and tables that will await tomorrow's activities. Without disturbance, the night executes deepening, and around the quiet center of the hearth, the room maintains stillness as darkness settles more completely over the building and the road beyond.